The concept of racing public roads is nothing new. More than a century ago, cars raced the infamous Targa Florio in Sicily. A century later, it's been copied in several parts of the world: Australia, New Zealand, Newfoundland, even Mexico. The concept is simple: special stages or sections of closed public roads where speed limits are legally ignored. Generally, the transport sections between these special stages are in amongst the public and on roads where normal speed restrictions apply. Unless you're in Mexico, and that's what makes this race so different. Welcome to La Carrera Panamericana. 85 cars and their crews from around the world have gathered in Veracruz, amongst them 5 Australian teams who've come to find out firsthand what this event is all about. Ian and Val Swan from Melbourne came here as spectators last year. The husband and wife team has competed in gravel and tarmac events back home and decided this was one for the bucket list.
Well, I always wanted to go to Mexico, and I couldn't think of a better way of doing it than jumping in a rally car and driving through the countryside trying to pay as many tolls and do my bit for the economy.
Their car of choice is a 67 Mustang, leased from the USA and finished just 15 minutes before scrutineering.
When Todd built these cars for us, he only had 3 65 fastbacks. He said, "I've got a 67 coupe." And I said, "Well, I've had one of those. Can I have a blue one with white stripes?" And he said, "Yes, but I got here and it's got no white stripes."
Swanee also convinced some of his rally mates to join them. KC and Marianne Callanan from Mackay in Queensland are rally fanatics. They even came to Mexico 5 months ago to test the water and try out their 65 fastback.
We came down and did the Chihuahua in May, really enjoyed it, but this is the big one. This is like their Bathurst.
Len and Gail Catlin won the inaugural Targa Newfoundland in their 69 Mustang and understand clearly this is more than just a race.
I think we've just really come for the enjoyment and the adventure. It's more so the adventure, doing it with people you know, and the stress and drama, and then the relief and the pleasure. So that's why we do it.
The Catlins' fastback is nothing like their own 69.
They're certainly different to what we run. They're a lot more standard, a lot more basic. So it's certainly different to drive.
Joe Cordo has brought his co-driver wife out of retirement for La Carrera.
That's just the experience more than anything else. I mean, we don't expect to win or anything like that. As I say, this is an experience, and it's probably been on my wish list for about 30 years. He and Christine have already experienced time behind the wheel of their Mustang. We left Dallas, and before we'd got probably 20 k's down the road, one of the truck engines seized, which was towing this particular vehicle. So we had no other tow vehicles. So what we had to do was drive it. No other choice.
Then there's Dave Ryan. He doesn't have a wife alongside. He's got his mate Greg Stevenson. And unlike the others, Dave has limited experience in competition events.
It's been something that we've wanted to do since we did the London-Sydney in 1993. It's always been in the bucket list, and the bucket's getting shallower and the time's getting shorter, so we decided to do it.
Dave's brought his own car, a very special 54 FJ.
It's interesting. It's basically we took the body shell and cut the whole floor out of it. We fabricated the chassis. It has a fabricated front end, which is fairly similar to the old style V8 supercar front ends. The rear end is a 4-link with Watts linkage, coilovers all round, disc brakes all round, Parrot full floater rear end, Super T10, and just a pretty nice little red motor.
For the 10 Australians, La Carrera Panamericana is not about winning, it's about adventure and experience.
Well, it's a little different because it's got that Mexican flavour, you know. We've done rallying in South America and in Africa, and these things are an adventure. You don't have to win it, you just got to take as much out of it as you possibly can. And every one like this has got some special little feature, and this one's it's Mexico.
And in Mexico, the route book is different to Down Under.
It's got tulips, but it's pace noted, and there's an awful lot of them. There's so much in there that the co-driver is going to be totally exhausted at the end of the stage.
It was really interesting that one of the officials came and spoke to me 2 days ago about having our wives co-driving and their ability to get the job done. had absolutely no idea the amount of rallying that these girls have done. It was actually quite funny. And it was a genuine concern for them. You know, the fact that if they're not co-driving properly, you arrive at something that you needed warning about, and that's when the big crashes happen.
No crashes for the Australians, but Jack Rogers and Carolyn Strupp find themselves in need of a tow, and the Aussie service crew is on hand to help.
And we just know them from a lot of different events, so we're a fair bit of camaraderie around. Yeah, and just a great spirit. I call him on the phone. He goes, "Yeah, we're okay. The door's a little bent." What happened? He goes, "Well, a truck hit the door when I was trying to get out." But I'm sure he's thinking, better it hit the door than hit him.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back.
It was Jack who introduced Todd Landon to La Carrera, and Todd's the man behind the 4 Australian Mustangs that are safely back in Veracruz. Todd has one objective.
Get everybody to the end, and by whatever means possible. And if you can get to the end, whether you are in first place or last place, you cross the finish line. I mean, that's such a victory that people tend to have a smile on their faces.
Right now, there are no smiles in Dave Ryan's camp. Seems the FJ has a knock in the engine. So while the others are experiencing the ceremonial start, his Mexican service crew is burning the midnight oil. Pre-dawn race day, and the FJ arrives at the start, but only just.
Oh, as you can hear, it's knocking and rattling and banging and carry on. The guys had the front end out of it last night and dropped the oil pan off it. Yep. We found that 3 of the rod bolts had been just making contact with the oil pan. The engine builder had modified it, but the pans had a lot of welding on it. And we think the run yesterday, with it getting really hot, has allowed it to relax a little bit. Either that or it's stressed up a bit more, either way it moved. And we've ended up with these 3 rod bolts just touching the side of the pan, so that was the big noise we had yesterday. We've got this top end noise now, which according to all the gurus is only a crook lifter, and it shouldn't give us too much stress. They said run it today and see what happens, which is okay, but in the bottom line is they're not paying the bills. If it goes pop, then but we're here to race, so that's it. We'll go.
The wind howls in off the Gulf of Mexico and onto the esplanade along Boca del Rio at Veracruz. 85 cars are lining up for the start. Mustangs, Porsches, Oldsmobiles, BMWs, Chevs, Jags, Volvos. The range of makes and models is extraordinary, and none more so than Jorge Siman's Buick, as Swanee discovers.
Amazing, isn't it?
What is it?
It's a Buick Centurion 56.
As it was built, apart from being a racing car, is it the shape and everything?
Oh, yes, it's a transformation for racing, and we change the front and the roof because the original is glass, you know, and this one is...
Yeah. Now I think I've actually seen one now. What sort of engine does it have?
It's a Vortec 350.
Yeah.
It's a 400 caballos, 400 horsepower.
That's how it was built, isn't it? It's an amazing motor car.
Yes, it's a very extraño. I don't know what to say.
It's a very different, exotic car.
Exotic
you should
car.
be very, very proud of it.
No, nitrous oxide is not allowed.
It's our fun department. And Uwe said, unfortunately, we don't want to hear the noise of the engine. Therefore, we have installed some music.
Seems the Germans are getting into the Mexican spirit.
And some of the guys are really fast driver here, but we just want to come to Sacaseca, enjoy the time and have fun and celebrate a little bit.
For those who are taking it seriously, the weapon of choice in La Carrera is the Studebaker. Built in the 1950s with natural aerodynamics, modified versions were raced in NASCAR, and many of these have found their way into this event, and mostly at the pointy end. So it begins. The 2013 La Carrera Panamericana is underway. What this next week will hold is anyone's guess. But one thing's for sure, it will be an adventure. Today's adventure will total some 500 kilometres from the coastal tourist city of Veracruz to Oaxaca to the south, taking in 90 kilometres of special stages. The first speed stage is 174 kilometres away, but the race seems to have already begun. At speeds in excess of any of the speed limits, the convoy races out of Veracruz, heading west to breakfast in Orizaba. Jerry Bashford is also a rally competitor, but in this event he's joined the Aussie support team, and part of that role means he's on camera car duty. Jerry is shocked by the speed the cars are doing leaving town.
This is unbelievable. I'm not in the event, but I might as well be.
The cars do slow, but only because they're forced to. Mexican motorways are littered with tollways, and it's a rare opportunity for drivers to catch a breath.
That's a different road, isn't it? It's unbelievable. What speed were you doing?
At one point 180.
Further on, the traffic has actually moved off this side of the road to allow the race cars an uninterrupted path.
The row of trucks just goes on and on and on and on. It's amazing.
At the 135 kilometre mark, the convoy breaks the unofficial road race for breakfast. It's been an eventful start to a race that hasn't actually begun.
And they stopped the traffic for 2.5 kilometres of traffic jam so we could go along the other side of the road. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
La Carrera certainly has traction amongst the community. People flock for signatures from their race heroes, or so they think. Breakfast is inside the massive department store Sanborn's. Unlike the journey here, pace inside is much more relaxed.
Oh no, this one.
The frantic pace resumes at a time determined by the organisers. There's still another 38 k's to the start of the first special stage. On paper, there appears to be enough time to reach the start line, but then you can never underestimate the Mexican enthusiasm. A top-up is required before SS1. In all, there's a total of 500 kilometres today, so monitoring fuel levels is important for an Australian crew unfamiliar with the distraction of hero status.
Well, they're all so happy and they just enjoy anything, a shake of the hand. I told the girls though in their youth school uniform they were pretty, they wore their lovely red blazers. They all started giggling and they're just so happy and lovely.
There is a race happening today and it does start at 10:15 a.m. but not as we might have expected. After racing through the streets and highways to get here, the first special stage is downgraded due to fog, and all teams travel at road speed over the hill to Acolzingo. It's an amazing irony that the transport to get to the start is faster than the speed stage itself. On the positive side, it does give the teams a chance to settle in to the Mexican route instructions.
Just give me a second.
Into a left 2, don't cut, no, whatever that is.
Despite the downgrade, there are dramas for some. The engine in Chris Ebert's 1954 Studebaker has shut down.
The electronic says it's too hot, so it says stop.
1954, technology.
Yeah, we put new technology into an old car and we lose it.
Finally, La Carrera is underway. Special Stage 2 is 10 kilometres long and crews taste their first official stage at speed. It's a respectable time of 4.51 seconds for the Swans in the Mustang they've affectionately named Subaru. They're the quickest of the Aussies, leading the Callinans in Bonn by 13 seconds. Bonn stands for Bag of Nails, so named by an English competitor, Richard Tysack, who won the historic C category in 2008 in this car. Joe and Christine Cordo are 30 behind in Gypsy Wind, a stang that's previously run here as well as Pikes Peak. Sharav is an exceptionally hot wind in the Middle East, but the car that runs by that name is far from hot today. Len and Gail Catlin are struggling with the handling of the yellow Mustang, and they're languishing down the order with the rare spares FJ. headsets might be stopping them from hearing the clatter of the engine, but Dave and Greg are starting and finishing each speed section, hoping to evaluate the noise at the overnight service. American Doug Hampton and his son John weren't out to set any records, or so they thought. Seems they're one of the first to have an off.
I feel like a right stupid idiot.
By the end of the morning stages, Casey and Marianne have picked up the pace. They pipped the Swans by 1 second in SS3, but finished the 20-kilometre SS5 6 seconds behind. The air temperature is remarkably pleasant at this time of year, but how's it going inside a Mustang with few creature comforts and no aircon?
Yeah, good, mate. Be good if we weren't sitting in a sauna.
Up front, the Studebakers are dominating. Hilaire Dameron in 1:15 has been dicing with Mexicans Gabriel Perez and Emilio Velasquez. Dameron had the advantage before lunch after favourite Memo Rojas spun off the road in SS4. Rojas had won both the first stages by 0.1 of a second. Perez, meantime, is a second decay quicker over SS6 and sneaks in front of Dameron with one stage to go. The Australian battle swings between the Swans and the Callinans. Casey and Marianne concede 4 seconds through the second last stage of the day, Ian and Val finishing the first day in 12th outright. Joe and Christine are the third of the Antipodeans home. Len Catlin would have expected to be further up the pecking order, but Sharav is a handful, and he and Gail are not taking any risks.
The car's a bit flighty, but a bit scary, but we're getting better as we're going, and yeah, no, we've had a reasonable day. Getting used to the notes.
I'm just taking in a little bit of the scenery here. It's absolutely stunning.
I got told several times to concentrate on what I was doing instead of watching the scenery, but that's okay. I'm here to enjoy.
Engine issues or not, the boys in the FJ are pleased with their first effort.
It's going really well. It's still got that noise in it, but mate, we've had a great day. The stages have been sensational. Really, really good.
It's been an interesting start to the event. While the competition in stage has the officially recorded times, the transport stages are still providing as much challenge as the race itself. Only now, at the end of the day, is there a chance to really relax.
We had a police convoy in, and we couldn't keep up with the police. So I think we were doing something like 180 down the main road, and it was just insane.
I think the races, from what I understand, is in the traffic and getting to the next stage.
But you get out onto the roads and people go past you at 200 k's an hour. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
It was quite amazing, something you don't get to experience in Australia. But if you did, we'd all be in the lockup.
Oaxaca's town centre comes alive long before the sun next morning. Studebakers occupy the first few positions and attract plenty of attention. For the Aussie teams, their attention is focused firmly on the first coffee of the day. Day 2 will see the crews backtrack to Tehuacan before heading north to the city of Mexico. In all, 562 kilometres with 8 special stages covering nearly 120 kilometres at speed. 0700 and La Carrera begins again. Overnight leader Gabriel Perez is not first car away. That honour lies with Emilio Velasquez for a reason that will make perfect sense to the Mexicans. Importantly, Memo Rojas is back on the road after his off yesterday, and with penalties is still well inside the top 10, just in front of the American Paul Ladke.
They reckon Mexican taxi drivers are frustrated rally drivers, and I now believe it.
There is a taxi in the event. Amazingly, American Martin Lorber has the little Italian 4-cylinder pocket rocket, mixing with the high-powered V8s. Ian and Val lead the Australians, but things didn't start well this morning. Seems there's been an issue over when they should refuel, and they barely have enough to get to service.
It's not a good way to start the day. Tonight we fill up before we put it into the service.
KC and Marianne are just 6 seconds behind, and there's another 40 seconds back to Joe and Christine. The weather closes in for SS2 and a repeat of yesterday's stage downgrading looks possible.
Okay, I think this stage now has just been downgraded. Everyone's just taking off nice and slowly because the fog is like the first stage yesterday.
Which suits us down at the ground because we're running on 1 litre of fuel.
But luck is not on their side, and their fuel will need to last another 10 kilometres at speed.
False alarm. Stage isn't downgraded.
It's not downgraded.
They want us to drive in the fog.
Oh, great.
Sharav's handling is not to Len's liking, and he and Gail nurse the Mustang through the morning stages.
So that wasn't comfortable.
But things are less comfortable in the Swan camp.
Run out of petrol.
Oh, no.
Fortunately for them, word quickly gets back to service and, appropriately, Jerry is dispatched with a can of gas. KC and Marianne have had their own issues in Bonn this morning.
Well, we lost our time card between the two controls because she continuously puts it in the road book. And as the driver, I've been saying, please don't put your time card in the road book because you'll lose it, as we have on many previous occasions. So it's all very well for her to tell me how to drive. It's when I tell her how to go drive, that's when the shit hits the fan.
He's telling stories that shouldn't be told. There's some things you just don't say.
But when they're as important as losing the road card, then I should have kicked it off with once upon a time.
I should say.
Perhaps the organisers had a point when they asked how the married couples would get on in the car.
What a morning.
The situation in Subaru isn't disastrous, but it was a near thing.
She said, we won't do it here, we'll do it the next one, but don't let that guy get away. Oh, there's no more Pemexes. So how far we got to go, honey? About 100 kilometres. And I said, we've got about 40k in the tank. What do you think we'll do? We got through the 2 stages, went 1k out of it, and the thing went... We got an hour and a half transport service. How lucky are we? How lucky